Thank you so much for the cameras that are on. We do like to have cameras on. That way we know you're here, you're paying attention, and you're benefiting from it. And Amy, welcome. We're happy to have you join us and see what things are all about. This is our weekly workshop. And today, I had on the agenda to talk about overcoming common objections. Now, before we go there, as always, I like to ask, is there anything in particular that you guys need to talk about? So what objections would you say you're having questions about or maybe struggling with?
I had a buyer's appointment on Friday with an investor. We went through the buyer's presentation, and then we went into the BRBC, and I explained it to him. The objection I got was, why am I going to sign this right now if I don't know what you have to offer to me? So I said, I honestly didn't know what to say because I've never had that objection. I don't know what you have to offer me right now, but I said, I just told him, you know what, you make a great point. Because he said, I don't know. He said, I don't know if you're gonna put in the work to like send me homes and like do this and that. And I'm like, okay, how about this? How about let's go. We didn't go over at that point, but I said, let's go over it right now so you know what's on it. You know, we're here already. And then I'm like, I want you to know, and we're gonna get into that later down the agreement, but I asked him if you heard about the NAR settlement and what happened. He said no. So I went down to the page on it, explained the compensation advisory, and also explained to him that for him to, view houses and look at them, actually, he would have to sign it. So he said, how about you send me a list of homes, and then if I see one I like, then at that moment I'll sign it with you. So, but yeah, that was the objection I had. I didn't overcome it in the moment, if I'm being honest. I just said, you know what, that makes sense to me. Let me go ahead and put together a list of homes to send you. And then that's how we kind of went about it. But he was an investor, so I know he has like probably interviewing other agents, has more options, things like that.
Okay, so let me ask you because sometimes, and we'll talk about how to handle specific objections and so be thinking about what objections you want us to talk about through today. And as we're talking about other things, if you have one that comes to mind, please put it in the chat so that way we can address it. But first, Sebastian, I want to ask, did you do the first of all, the qualifying conversation with the investor
Yeah,
before meeting with him?
yes.
Okay. Then when you met with him, was it for the purpose of the buyer consultation?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess my question is, if you did a buyer consultation, what was covered? Because the objection that he gave you
Mm-hmm.
should have been covered in the buyer consultation.
Well, I went over the market, what to expect, and how I work with my clients, and also how the process works.
Okay, so did you go over the things you would be doing for him?
Yeah, I did go over all of that. Throughout each step when we get into the what's it called? The process part. I call it the meat and potatoes of the consultation. But
Mhm.
when I get to that part, I tell them, okay, so like this is the process of how it works. My job, I always tell them, my job began before I even started talking to you, if I'm being honest. So it started from that point, and then this is what goes on throughout every part, and this is what I do, and this is what you could expect. So I always break that down for every
Okay.
client.
And I know that you're good at that. That's why I was curious how that objection came up. So typically, if that particular objection were to come up, because it sounds like you did answer the questions, and yet he's just making an excuse not to sell.
Right, right, right.
So, what I would initially say to something like that is, well, usually if somebody isn't ready to sign by the time we're done with the buyer consultation, it means I haven't answered all of your questions. What
Mm,
question do you still have?
that would have been perfect. That would have been perfect. because he
Yeah.
didn't like have it an objection against the BRBC. It just seemed like he didn't want to sign it in that moment, if that makes sense. But he was okay with once I started sending him homes because he knows he has to, sign it to get into the homes and look at them to then sign it. Once he sees that I'm gonna be like proactive about it. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but I think that's kind of how he thought about it. But nonetheless, that objection I think would have the objection handler would have been great.
Yeah, that's something that usually that's the first thing when somebody doesn't want to sign, whether it's a BRBC or a listing agreement, anything that you're trying to have them do, the first thing you want to ask is what questions do you still have? Because that's
Right.
usually the biggest reason somebody doesn't want to sign, right?
Yes, and I would ask him along the way, like, does this make sense? I would stop. Do you have any questions about it? And he'll be like, no, that makes sense. That sounds good, whatever. So, I mean, maybe there was just this question that he had that I didn't answer or I didn't cover. So,
And
What's
that could
that? Oh, it's beautiful.
That could be, or it could also be that he just wasn't ready and didn't want to admit that, right? But one of the things that we have to be willing to do is let them know that part of signing this means that you're going to be working, it's a loyalty agreement. You'll be working exclusively with me, and I can only go to work for you if you're willing to do that. And sometimes with investors, they're not. Sometimes they want to work with just whoever they call about the property, and that's up to you whether or not you want to take that risk because you're putting in a lot of work. And
yeah.
if you're getting an exclusive agreement signed, that might not be somebody you want to work with. But in the future, also, what I may suggest for that is okay. So after asking why they aren't ready to sign, do you still have some questions? And if they're still saying, well, I just don't want to sign, however they go about that, okay, well, here's what I'd like to do is I'm going to send you a list of homes and please pick out any that you're interested in. And then I'm going to send you an agreement and we can go see up to 3 homes, right? And then after we do that, you see how I work for you, then you'll likely be ready to sign the BRBC, right? Or, we're talking in our terms to them, the buyer's representation agreement to work exclusively with me. But after that, if somebody's not willing to sign an exclusive agreement with you and you've put that much work into it, then sometimes it's not about overcoming an objection. Sometimes it's about moving on to the people who are willing to work with us.
And that was perfect because I was just about to ask that. How do I approach it moving forward? Do I just tell them like, hey, I sent you these homes. Do you want me to? Do I send you the, or not just do I ask them that? Not ask them that, but just send them the agreement, or do I get them to sign what would the 3 houses form be called? The SPR,
The PRBS, or no,
PRBF thing,
right?
something like that. But,
I have too many acronyms now.
but yeah, okay.
I'm going to put a tool for everybody in the chat. Let's see if I can get it to upload here. Here we go. This is from the Ignite workbook, and I just had it put together, the conversation helpers. Okay, so in here, and this is brand new. This is since all of the changes. So the conversation helpers and those that are in the PC program, we have replaced it now because some of the conversation helpers we can't say anymore because we do have to have buyers agree to pay us. So I have replaced that in the PC toolkit for those of you who are in the coaching program. But I want everybody that's here today to have access to this. So these are conversation helpers. Objection, there are not only what to say for different types of things that we're doing, whether it's, you're welcome, whether it's social media, whether it's Ford conversations, whether it's referral conversations, but there's also all different types of objection handling in here, depending on what it is that you're doing. There's objection handlers for the listing agreement, for the buyer's agreement, for inspections, for the home inspections and things that I know sometimes we don't always think of those as objections, and yet they can be huge objections, right? Part of what I want everyone to understand, can anybody tell me what is the best way to overcome objections?
I think like just having the correct answers is a like knowing what to being prepared for the objections, I think would be the best way to overcome them.
Okay, that is right. Being prepared, so knowing your conversations. And I love we're getting asking questions in the chat. Yes, absolutely asking questions. And what does that all come down to?
Practice your conversations for each one of them.
Yes, practicing conversations. Whitney?
Understanding their motive.
Yes, that you hit the nail on the head. So the best way to overcome objections is to avoid the vast majority of them in the first place. And we do that by having qualifying conversations, which includes asking questions, digging deeper, not just asking the questions on the list of the buyer and the seller qualifying questions. Those are important. Those are the key questions. But then sometimes their answers bring other questions to mind. We need to ask those. When you're doing a buyer consultation or a listing presentation, you should be asking all along the way for their buy-in. So after each point, does that make sense? Does that sound fair? Do you have any questions? Right? Those are things that we should be doing. You could call that a soft close or a mini close all along the way. By the time you get to the end of your presentation, there's likely very little to no objection left. And if there is, you've uncovered it through the conversation and can be prepared to handle it by the time you're done. And also, when you get an objection on the phone, somebody does a sign call and you're answering questions and you're doing the qualifying conversation for them as a buyer, or the seller, you're having the qualifying conversation and you ask if they have any questions before you go, and they ask you, what do you charge? What do you say?
That's not something discussed over the phone. You want to tell them that that's still exactly why you want to meet, to go over those types of things.
Absolutely. We never should try to overcome objections on the phone, because that doesn't work most of the time. You want to be face to face with them for objections. So you use any objection that comes up in that conversation as the very reason to need to meet, and assure them that you are going to address that when you meet. Make sense? Okay, so what other types of objections would you like help with, or have you come across that, or have you heard could happen? Maybe it hasn't happened to you yet, but you're nervous about. Can't hear you, Michelle. Still can't hear you. A second ago, something popped on your sound. Nope.
Can you hear me now?
Yay, we gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, I'm in the office. Hold on. I would prefer to do it with the speaker or the things in my ear.
Can't hear you. Mm-mm.
Weird. Okay. Every other meeting I have, they can hear me without that. But you guys, for some reason, My speaker things aren't working. Anywho, I have someone that wants to list down the road,
Mhm.
but they called me this morning and they're like, well, what if we do it now? They need to sell the house. They're in a different state and they're worried about doing it right now because of the time of year. And so how would you respond to that? Because none of us have a crystal ball of what's going to happen down the road.
Mhm.
But obviously, if you look at stats, there's more buyers in the springtime than there are just before the holidays. So I would love some advice on that, how you would handle that.
Okay. So actually this time of year is, so Michelle, you'll be the seller that's concerned about selling now, okay? And so just to kind of role play this a little bit.
Okay.
So Michelle, I can really understand your trepidation about this time of year. However, if I'm correct, you need to sell as soon as possible, right?
Yes, or we need to get tenants in the property because we need the income.
Okay. And are you aware of all of the ups and downs that can come with tenants? Have you researched everything that you would need to do in order to have a tenant legally?
Not legally, but yes, I've heard what you've had to share about it, and it is risky.
Okay. So do we agree that selling it is probably the better option for you?
Absolutely.
Okay, fantastic. So actually, this time of year is a phenomenal time to sell, and particularly right now. And here's why. There are historically less listings on the market this time of year for the very reason that you're concerned about. However, there are still lots of buyers out there that need to move. And there's lots of buyers out there that would love to get into a new home before the end of the year, be it for holidays or tax purposes or whatever the case may be. So getting your home on the market in the next week actually gives us about a month to be able to get it sold. And with our average days on market being less than that currently, or is your days on, what's your days on market in
Well,
your area?
they're LA County, not Ventura
Okay.
County. So I need
So
to check the numbers over there.
okay, so be careful with that depending
Yeah,
on
yeah,
where it's at, right? But
yeah.
with our average days on market, it is highly likely that we'll be able to get you into escrow so that we can get those buyers in by the end of the year. And even if it goes past the end of the year, at least the buyer and you have the comfort of knowing that it will be completed soon.
Okay. What about the house projects that need to be done? And I probably need a month of time. So now I'm looking at the earliest, early December. What are your thoughts with that?
So what projects do you feel you need to do?
Just chipping paint, boards that, little things that will really make a difference on showing the house. It would look so much nicer if these items were completed with the price that we want.
Okay, so if they're little things, do you really think you need a month?
Yeah, because I'm out of state right now and I have to send my husband on a plane to get there and he has to empty out the rest of the house and do the projects. So I think we're going to need more time than yeah, I think a month's probably going to be about right. But I hear you. If we can get it done sooner, that would be better.
Okay, so let me ask, how much money do you think you'll have to spend on these little projects?
Oh, that's so good, Jody. Can we get on a three-way call here? This is good. This is really good. Yeah, you're right. A gallon of paint's 40 bucks in a few hours. And yeah, it probably isn't worth the 3 grand that I'm going to lose in my mortgage this month.
Yeah, you
Good
see, you
point.
saw where I was going with
I
that,
knew
right?
exactly where you're going. That's why I said, great point. Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
so maybe we come on the market a couple $1,000s under our competition,
Yeah.
right? So there's lots of different things that you can do. Maybe those things aren't a big deal. That I'm out of the role play, by the way. I'm back to
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
talking.
yeah, yeah.
So maybe those things aren't a big deal to some people. Now, chipping paint, you can touch up a couple things, right? It's not going to take you a month to touch up a couple things, right?
Mhm.
So we just have to reason with our sellers, right? How much money are they going to lose in continuing to pay the mortgage versus how much money are they going to spend? Should we just go ahead and come on the market at maybe a little bit lower price? Because now we're telling people we get these things need to be done. So, right? At least it's a starting point. Let the buyer ask for what they want to be done. Be prepared to do a couple of things if they ask for them to be done during their inspections. Have that put that note in the MLS remarks to the other agents so that you are addressing that ahead of time. So all kinds of things, and you can tell your sellers you can do that too.
Yeah, I know their concern is that the first impression is the best impression. And so that's something that she's gone back to over and over again. But I mean, I know the house and it's beautiful and it's not like you walk through it and go, oh my gosh, what a disaster. So,
Yes.
yeah,
Well,
okay.
and that's one of those things. She is right. The first impression is the best impression, right? And we're also our own worst critics. So if you know that the house is in good condition, that's,
Mhm.
just help reason with her on that. And it's okay if you want to spend a weekend getting
Yeah,
a few of the things that you think stand out the most done, but you don't need to redo the whole house to get it on the market.
right, right. No, that's good. Thank you for that. That was really helpful.
Awesome. Oh, thank you, Kate. Okay. Who else has something that they would like to walk through? And hey, thanks. Well, I was gonna thank you for turning on the camera, but you turned it off. You guys know I am not a fan of cameras off. We realize there are certain circumstances where they have to be off, but in general, we need
No,
to.
I just am running errands and I don't ever want to be a distraction. So
Well, I appreciate that.
double duty. Okay.
It's actually a distraction to me to be able to help you guys when cameras aren't on. Because have you ever tried to talk to a Zoom full of black boxes? All right. Okay, who else has another situation, objection, or anything that you would like to talk about that would be helpful? My dog, by the way, is objecting to the mailman, so he'll be done in a minute.
I do.
Okay.
It's not, I guess, not a big deal, but I've been having lots of open houses lately. And I've been getting some buyers and 2 or 3 have mentioned the elections. So I guess for them it's a big thing. So they're like, well, maybe we're just gonna wait, after the election and then see if it's a good time for us to buy.
Okay, so have you dug a little deeper to ask why they're concerned about the election?
Well, I just asked like what was their motivation. Some of them said that they were renting. So I just went over, buying is better than renting, obviously. But like one of them was very into like, no, I'm just gonna wait after the elections. But she didn't really, I guess I didn't ask why, but she didn't really give me a reason why.
It's common that people get nervous around election time, and I personally don't understand it. Because if you need to buy or sell, you're going to do it regardless.
Right.
So it really does come down to motivation and maybe asking the question. Well, I would ask, what is your specific concern around waiting till the election? Right. And then let them tell you what that is. And that's going to help you how you take it to the next step. Right. And then maybe ask them, well, do you intend to buy when the election's over, regardless? And if the answer is yes, then of course, why are we waiting to start the process? Maybe they're waiting for interest rates to go up or go down. But remember, guys, if interest rates go up, then it doesn't mean that they can't refinance later. And the odds of them going up so high so fast are slim to none, right? They may go up a little bit, but not enough to be terribly concerned about. If interest rates go down, okay, great. You might save 1/4%, 1/2%, but there's going to be a lot more buyers that are competing for that same house, which is going to drive the price up, which doesn't matter if the interest rate goes down 1/4%, your payment's still going to be higher because the price is right. So these are things that we have to educate them on. Because a lot of people don't understand what interest rates going up and down actually do to purchase prices of homes. So when you get faced with an objection of any kind, before just throwing up an answer, right? Before just starting to handle it, ask a question. Dig a little deeper. Where's the objection coming from? Because sometimes it's just lack of not knowing, right? We didn't answer a question. And 9 times out of 10, probably that's why people have an objection. They just still don't understand something. So just dig a little bit deeper, and that's going to help you know where to go. And then remember, though, not everyone's ready to do something, and that's okay. We're not going to push people into doing something they don't want to. That's not our job. That's not being a fiduciary. We put those aside, we nurture them till they're ready, and we move on to find people who are ready. Marisol?
So I just had a question, like, what I'm learning is that we just have to ask more questions, right? So I guess like what I struggle with is one, coming up with the right questions, like just knowing which questions to ask, because just right now, how you added so many more questions to Michelle's situation, and it's like, oh, duh. And then even like to Sebastian, so it's like, it just not second nature. And then also I struggle with like being too invasive, I guess, with my approach. So I think it makes me hold back a little bit. So just, I don't know if any advice you can give on that.
Okay. So first of all, sometimes we're not always going to know questions going into a situation, right? Because any situation can go many different directions, which would mean many different questions. And one set of questions wouldn't work for one scenario, right? So part of it is just getting in there and having the conversation. And then that's going to help direct your questions. Like that, what I recommended for Sebastian is completely different from Michelle, which is completely different from Maria. And yet they're all kind of the same because we have to ask some questions to find out and dig deeper, right? So, as far as feeling like you're interrogating them
Yeah.
or being invasive, that's not at all what we're doing. Let me ask you, if you went to the doctor with a pain and they just wanted to cut you open because you had a pain in your side and assumed it was your appendix, wouldn't you want them to ask some questions first?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I realize that's an extreme example, but it makes the point. We are also professionals, and our job is to diagnose before we prescribe, right? We can't help somebody make a wise decision unless we know the facts. We can't know the facts until we ask the questions. And so part of being, instead of looking at it as being intrusive, look at it as being the fiduciary that it's your responsibility to be. Because we can't help somebody when we don't have all the answers. And as we start asking questions, we'll get more questions that will come to mind because their answers are going to create more questions. Now, as far as you mentioned with Michelle, I took her down a road. She knew where I was going when I talked about the cost, right? Those are things that you'll learn by doing over time.
Mm,
You're not going to learn every way to handle everything in one session, right?
right.
And this is why it's so important to have practice conversations. You guys, you can't get out of practicing your conversations. If you're not willing to practice your conversations, and I know I sound like a broken record right now, sorry. But if you're not willing to practice your conversations, you shouldn't be in this business because that is a key component of your job. And here's the thing, if you have concern about what questions to ask, practice with somebody, make arrangements with somebody, and have them throw a scenario out at you that you're not prepared for, right?
Right.
And then, think about that ahead of time. Let them know, hey, I want you to give me a couple scenarios that are going to make me need to ask you more questions. Over time, you'll get good at it with practice.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Kate says, I really like how many agents in our brokerage call themselves educators. That makes sense to come from that angle. Really does, because really it's interesting. I hear so many people have a limiting belief around, I don't want to be I don't want to sound salesy. I hear that all the time, and I agree with it. We shouldn't. And I've said this many times, the only place we should see salesperson is on our license, because we're real estate salespeople, and that's what our license says, right? But as a realtor, you are an educator, you're a consultant, you're a coach, right? You are all these things to help people make wise decisions. Purchasing a home, selling a home are the largest financial transactions that people do. And the only way we can help them make wise decisions is to know what they need to do, to ask questions, right? That's part of being that fiduciary. And that's our number one responsibility to each and every client. Really great conversations today. Who else has a scenario or situation that you would like to talk about as far as objection? Whitney?
Okay, I'm going to put myself out there. I have a neighbor who is looking to sell her house and move out of state. I had a very brief conversation with her, and in it she mentioned, I positioned myself, I know this area well. She said she has, I think it's a nephew that she was thinking of using, but she's not there yet. So how do I get around that?
Well, there's a few things that you can do. I would even ask her, so how long has your nephew been in real estate?
But here's the thing, I'm probably newer than him,
That doesn't matter.
Okay.
So does she know you're new?
I don't, maybe not.
Okay. So she doesn't know, she doesn't need to know.
Okay.
And what brokerage is he with? I would want to find some things out, right? Because and let me just address right now the limiting belief that many have of being new. Okay. You all of you who are at Keller Williams, number one, have a leg up if you're new, because of all the phenomenal training and things that are provided to you. Number two, if you're in our productivity coaching program, you really have a leg up, okay? Because we provide so much value to you. And so even if you're new and somebody knows it, basically don't try to hide it if they know it. We don't ever want to lie, right? We want to use that to our advantage. You know what? The reason I'm new is the fact that I'm new is the very reason why I am the best person to help you, because I am determined to make this career successful. I am determined to help as many people as I can with their real estate needs. And I really want to get my business off the ground. And the second best reason to use me is because I am part of a market center that has several hundred qualified, seasoned agents. And those of you that are in the coaching program can say, and I'm on a team with agents and coaches that have decades of experience who are there for me every step of the way. So when you hire me, you get the enthusiasm and the drive of me being new and the experience of the team behind me.
That's great.
And so then if somebody wants, it's funny because then there's different ways to handle different things, right? Because if it was the nephew, I would say different things to him, right? But you want to find out, how long's he been in real estate? What brokerage is he with? Why is she thinking about using the nephew? Maybe it's out of obligation. But should we use somebody in the largest transaction of our life just out of obligation? So is
That's
he
good.
going to be able to negotiate for you? right? So we want to dig a little deeper and ask questions. And the key, guys, is don't be afraid to ask the questions, because it's the only way you're going to know what direction to go next, right? And can I give you a really good tip about handling objections? First of all, we've talked already about how important the questions are when we get them, right? Don't just take it at face value, because it's usually not what the objection truly is. Okay, we're all good with that one? Okay. When you do actually have to use an objection handler, once you have said it, one, close your mouth, zip your mouth, stop talking. So many times agents want to throw out, oh, maybe you know 5 different objection handlers for this one thing that came up. Oh, I'm so excited. I know 5 different things I can say. And so you want to spit them all out because you're afraid to stop talking, because you're afraid they're going to say no. Guess what? That's how they will say no. Stop talking after the first objection handler, because likely you will have covered it enough and can move forward. And if they still have objections, then you can say something else. But too much of the time we talk ourselves out of things because we don't stop talking.
Thank you, Jodi.
You're welcome. I love that, Kate. 4 agents for the price of 1. All 3 coaches and you. Yay. All right. Who else has a situation or an objection that they've encountered or is afraid of encountering that you would like to go over?
Hi.
Hello.
Hi there. Well, I am first gonna have a question on the BRBC. It's the first time doing it this way with the whole changes with the buyer. Don't know what they're gonna ask me, but we have a conversation scheduled for later tonight on I sent him the contract last night and he just asked like, okay, he texted me this morning. Everything looks good. I only have a question, of course, of the percentage commission. Can we chat later? And I'm like, yes, of course. What time? And I don't know what the question is, but I'm like, okay, it's gonna be who pays that. Can we negotiate? Because on now it has in bold letters, it's not fixed by law, and in big bold letters it's there. You do not have to pay that. It's not fixed and it's negotiable. And I don't know, and I want to know how to prepare. Can I go
Okay.
lower? I'm sure. Who pays that? I don't know. I can only imagine what his question.
Okay. So what percentage did you put on the agreement?
2.5.
2.5. Okay. So I just asked so we can use it for
Mhm.
the conversation purpose.
Mhm.
Here's the thing. Yes, commissions are negotiable.
Mhm.
No, they are not fixed by law.
Mhm.
However, that doesn't mean you don't have your fee that
Mhm.
you stand firm on.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
So I would even say, yes, commissions are negotiable. I'm willing to negotiate. You can pay me 3% if you'd like. So and sometimes that's an icebreaker. You have to read the room, right? It depends on who you're working with. But here's the thing. Remember, you are a full service agent. So
Mhm.
yes, commissions are negotiable, but my fee to do everything we've talked about doing is 2.5%. Now, let me ask you, Maricruz, did you have a buyer consultation with him already?
I have, but not. It was way before the laws changed, and they just went to their lender, the lender that I provided them a long time ago with on Saturday, and talked about upping their prices. And then they text me they found a house that they want to see, and I'm like, wait a minute, okay. And we had it over the phone, but we're gonna hopefully meet in person at not this open house, at this house on Wednesday.
Okay,
But
so what is your what time are you meeting with him tonight?
after 6:30, so maybe 6:45.
Are you meeting in person?
No, on the phone.
Okay, I'm gonna encourage you to change that to a Zoom call.
Okay.
Okay, so you can be face to face. By the way, Zoom meetings are fine. The key is you want to be face to face. You need to see their body language. They need to see the smile on your face. They need it face to face for these types of things is important. Please do not have commission conversations and buyer consultations on the telephone unless there is absolutely no other choice. Okay. So I'm going to encourage you to change it to a Zoom meeting for this conversation. And then before you address commission, I want you to say, okay, I know that you mentioned that the commission is a concern to you, but I realized we haven't really talked about the process and how things work for quite some time. So I just want to go over that with you. Here's what I want you to do, Mata Cruz. In the PC toolkit, in the video library, there is a sample buyer consultation. Okay. I want you to watch that before tonight.
Okay.
Because that's going to show you the things that you need to cover and talk about. Okay. Of course, make them appropriate to your market and your situation, but that'll give you what you need to talk about. It's also going to show you how to approach the buyer, the BRBC, to present it to him. Okay. Because one of the things that we need to really avoid, everyone, is first of all, make sure we're answering the qualifying conversations. Okay. So avoid giving the BRBC to people that we haven't had a proper buyer consultation with, because that's where the objections are going to come in. They don't know what you're giving to them. They're paying you for they don't know what, right? They don't know how the market works. They don't know what to expect. They don't know what you're going to do for them. So you have to have a buyer consultation before presenting the BRBC. And then through the buyer consultation, you're getting those little buy-ins along the way. Does that make sense? Do you have any questions? Does that sound fair? Right? All of those things along the way. So by the time you get to the end and you say, great, all we have to do now for me to go to work for you is have you sign the buyer representation agreement. But before we have you sign the buyer representation agreement, I want to go over how compensation works. Okay? Because it is new. It's a concern for some people and it's not a concern for others. So that's where you take them to that last paragraph on page 2 of the buyer compensation advisory, or the broker compensation advisory, rather, the BCA. And you walk them through that paragraph. Then you go back into the buyer rep and you'll be able to see that done in that video. Okay.
Okay.
So let's see. I'm looking for something. So everyone that is here today is going to get a little bonus. I don't normally do this. Let's see. Where is it? Okay. Buyer consultation. Oop. Copy. I am going to put the link to the video I'm talking about. I know there's a couple of you on here that are not in our coaching program. And because you are here today, I'm going to go ahead and give you the link to that video that I talked about. Okay. If you're not in our coaching program and you would like help with these things, please reach out to me because I would be happy to talk to you about how we can help you. The things that we're talking about here today are things that we help everybody with that's in our program on a regular basis. Okay. And we want to make sure that we bring as much value to everyone as we can. But that's why we open this call up to the Market Center, because we want to help everyone. So hopefully that was helpful, Mary Cruz, and you can go through that and watch that video before you meet with them.
Yes, I will watch that video for sure. Thank you so much.
Awesome. I do want to add one other objection handler that might come up in your scenario tonight, and this is good for everyone to know. Even after all of that, if somebody asks if they'll do it for less, right? Well, you know, I can appreciate that somebody might do this for less. However, if they can't negotiate for their own commission, How do you think they're going to negotiate for you in the biggest financial transaction that you'll do? Right?
Yeah.
So make sure that they understand part of your value is negotiating for them. And as the buyer, you can negotiate to have the seller pay that fee or at least part of it, and let them know that you will do your best to get the seller to pay that fee for them or at least most of it. Okay? So that's part of making sure that we understand those things. Now, there's in the other tools that I put into the chat earlier, there are some of those objection handlers, so you can read them, practice them. But I'm going to really encourage you, watch that video and then find somebody to practice those objections with. Okay. All righty. What other questions do you have? We have a few more minutes. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to talk about? Or I can give you 10 minutes back. All righty. Well, it looks like your silence is voting for 10 minutes back in your day. Great conversations. Thank you to all who were willing to share your scenarios. That's how we learn. Keep it up. And next week, we will be talking about, what are we talking about? I just actually had it up and I forgot that quick. Setting proper expectations with clients for successful closings. Okay, so that's going to encompass things with negotiating for repairs and inspections and from start to finish. So be sure to tune back in for that next week. And if you're on the Central Coast, I will be there in person next week. Everybody have a great rest of your day.
Bye, Jodi. Thank you.
Bye.